Hello, I'm Lisa from Trails Edge Astrology, and today I would like to give you the rest of the story, the astrology of July through December 2024. We are at the summer solstice in the northern hemisphere, the winter solstice in the southern hemisphere, but the point at which the sun is either as far north or as far south as it's going to get, depending on which hemisphere you're living in. And so for us in the northern hemisphere, this is the longest day of the year, the most sunlight we're going to get. And every day following through December 21st, the days will get shorter. And of course, we go into fall and winter. This is the start of summer, though. And, when we're doing our year ahead planning in December in astrology, we do look at the whole year. But I think it's nice to revisit halfway through just to kind of remember um, what we have gone through, what kind of cycles we have started or kind of initiated, and then what we've got left in the year, so that we can plan, so that we can think about how we might want to co-create with the universe, what kinds of things the energy might be right for us to bring in. So that's what we're going to do today. Just look at those months ahead and see what the big transits are, what the things we're really watching out for are. So, but before we get started, let's talk about what has happened to date astrologically. Um, so we started the year with Pluto re-entering Aquarius. Now, Pluto is an outer planet. It takes 248 years to go around the cycle, so it doesn't hit all points in all of our charts in our lifetime. We don't live that long. Pluto has spent the last about since about 2008, 2009 in the sign of Capricorn. And the sign of Capricorn is very much about traditions and structures and stability and real earthy practical usefulness. And when Pluto is in a place in our charts or in the sky, for the world, it shows us how we can step more authentically into our power, or what structures or things that we think are solid or may not be so solid. So Pluto in Aquarius societally showed us things like the troubles with the banking system. Um, this is Jinx. He likes to say hi during these things during recording. So welcome, Jinx. So Pluto in Capricorn, we started off with the Great Recession and with the banking crisis. We ended Pluto in Aquarius, of course, with COVID. And so, we saw lots of places where the structures and the traditions that we relied on were maybe not as grounded or as stable as we thought they were. So, starting in 2023, Pluto began its movement into Aquarius, and Pluto moves very slowly and spends about half the year retrograde. So um, it's going back and forth between Capricorn and Aquarius between 2023 and 2024. By the time we get to the end of this year, Pluto will be in Aquarius for the next, I'm going to lose how many years it is, but 30 years, a long time. Pluto will be in Aquarius for the foreseeable future. But between now and then, it's going back and forth. So it's finishing up its Capricornian work, finishing up looking at changes in structures and working within the system, and it's moving into Aquarius. So Pluto in Aquarius is likely to be about some of the technological innovations we're seeing. Aquarian energy is about a more perfect union, a more perfect society. And so Pluto, whereas in Capricorn, Pluto worked within the structures, in Aquarius, Pluto will also work within those structures, but will definitely push the envelope a little further forward. And so I think a lot of us are excited about this. I think a lot of the AI movement right now is Pluto moving into Aquarius, and with the Jupiter Uranus conjunction as well, which we'll talk about in a second. Um, but those kinds of things, those kinds of innovations, those kinds of places where we make society more equitable and more fair, and certainly we step into that technology in ways that may or may not be equitable and fair. The jury's still out on that, but Pluto has moved into Aquarius at the beginning of January, and so that this is a big shift and a big theme over the year. and a big change. So between 2008 and the end of this year, those of us with Capricorn placements have really felt that Plutonian energy and that push to be more authentically who we are and to really reach down below the surface and shine light on stuff that we might not have wanted to look at, bring forward things we might not have wanted to look at. Any of you have heard my story know that Pluto in Capricorn is the reason that I finally was willing to, or I had to, um, talk about being an astrologer and start to do this work. So, Pluto moving into Aquarius means that any of us with early Aquarian placements are starting to feel that pressure to transform. Um, so societally, that this is an impact, and personally, if we've got anything honestly at the beginning signs of Aquarius, Taurus, Scorpio, um, or Leo. There we go. Aquarius, Taurus, Scorpio, or Leo. Anybody who's got placements at the beginning of those signs is probably feeling some pressure to transform at this point. So that was in January. We got to March and April where we had those really big, impactful eclipses. And as you will remember, the April eclipse, the April 8th eclipse, was a solar eclipse and came across much of the United States. So many of us saw at least some or all of that. Eclipses on the whole bring change. They are really excellent indicators of movement and can sometimes be a little jarring. So there was a lot of energy going on around that time. There was also a Mercury retrograde in here. April was a super interesting month. On April 20th, we had the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction. This happens every 14 years. And when Jupiter and Uranus come together, Jupiter expands and Uranus is about that revolutionary energy. Jinx just knocked something off the table for me, but that's okay. Um, Speaking to Jupiter Uranus, so when they come together every 14 years, there are technological advancements and there are cultural advancements, and there are just it's usually a really exciting time, sometimes a little jarring because Uranus is not known for subtlety. It's usually a big action. Um, we won't necessarily, things don't necessarily turn on a dime when Jupiter and Uranus come together, but we're definitely building into that. So we're building into this next 14-year cycle. So I suspect that there are some things bubbling up for you, some real substantial changes that you might be looking at. Jupiter and Uranus came together in Taurus, so that would impact anyone with placements around maybe 20 to 25 degrees. Taurus or the Scorpio, definitely, probably Leo and Aquarius as well. So those are kind of the hotbed places. And then finally, I think the transit that we were all kind of looking at and excited about is Jupiter entering Gemini. So Jupiter spends about 13 months in a sign, and when it changes signs, it's an exciting new initiation, particularly since Jupiter and Uranus had just come together. So Jupiter entering Gemini activates any of our Gemini placements, probably our Sagittarian placements as well. Gemini is opposite Sagittarius. Um, Perhaps some Virgo and Pisces placements as well. So that's kind of an expansive change, and like over the next year, that Gemini house in your chart really has the opportunity to grow and expand, and you have the opportunity to explore what that's going to look like. So that's kind of the beginning of the year. So the beginning of the year, I think overall could be summed up by um, expansive transformation in whatever way that shows up for you. But it was, generally um, the ability to step into new and exciting things. So I hope that's how it showed up for you. I know for a lot of us, it was intense. It was just a lot happening quickly, and it might have felt a little jarring. So if that was you, that's totally fair and valid. Um, and know that we're stepping into these new cycles, into this new energy that that will take us for with Jupiter in Gemini the next 13 months, with the Jupiter Uranus conjunction the next 14 years, and with Pluto in Aquarius the next 30 years. So so yeah, so anyway, all that is to say, that's where we've come so far this year. So now let's move on and talk about month by month what we're seeing, what the big transits are, and energy to work with will be for you in the coming months of the rest of 2024. So let's look at July. So July 15th, we have the Mars-Uranus conjunction. Mars is in Taurus right now. Uranus is in Taurus. And so Mars moves reasonably quickly. So every 6 months or so, we have some kind of Mars-Uranus interaction. More often than that, depending on what kind of aspects you want to look at. But let's say every 4 to 6 months, there's some kind of like Mars-Uranus interaction. But conjunctions are a special point, a special strong point where things are coming together. Mars and Uranus interactions can be a little volatile. So I'm curious how July will shape up. Mars likes to move fast, Uranus likes to move faster, and so when they come together, it can be a desire to ramp up and speed things up. And spring has not been slow, so I'm curious how that shows up for you. This will impact particularly the Taurus placements in your chart, the Taurus house in your chart. That space is ruled by Venus, so you can also look at where Venus is in your natal chart to kind of fill out that picture. But certainly one to watch for. Taurus is not a sign that moves very quickly. Taurus is fixed Earth, and so it is the flowers, it is the growing season. It's sometimes called well, Taurus is the bull, and if you've heard me talk about this earlier, when when Mars moved into Taurus, I referred to it as the bull in the china shop. You know, that Mars wants to move fast, but Taurus is not fast. It's very slow. It's very deliberate. And so middle of July, I'm curious to see how we feel, and if we're not like getting some itch to get moving. Being that Jupiter and Uranus just came together and started that story, any Uranus contact is interesting right now, and Mars might help us continue to activate whatever it is we're bringing in through that Jupiter Uranus conjunction. The other thing to note in July and parts of August, the beginning part of August, is that any Leo planets, any transiting Leo planets, which Sun, Venus, Mercury, any of the faster moving planets that are in Leo at the moment are or have or will oppose Pluto and square Uranus. So I bring this up because these faster moving planets, they do this every year, so it's not unique, except that Pluto has just moved into Aquarius, and so this is the first time this is happening for these planets. And we just had that Jupiter-Uranus square, or I'm sorry, Jupiter-Uranus conjunction. So we're having some squares to that with these faster moving planets. And so I wonder, opposition and squares tend to bring about either creative tensions or projections. Sometimes they're not the easiest energies to work with, but they're the energies that get us going, that get us moving on and accepting responsibility and doing whatever the next thing is. And so I'm curious to see, the middle part of July might feel a little tense, maybe. But I think it'll be activating. I think if you want to work with this in a positive way, take that energy and think about productively how you can engage with making the changes you want to see in the world, or whatever is coming up in your heart. Certainly in July, if doors open, walk through. That's true anytime, but certainly in July. All right, so let's look at August. So August, for the whole month of August, we have a Mercury retrograde. So in July, we have this energy that's saying, go fast, really really through the spring. We had energy saying go fast, and we've started to get some seeding slowdown points. And Mercury being retrograde in between Virgo and Leo in August is certainly one of those places where we might be asked to slow down and rethink, revise, redo. Doesn't mean we don't move forward. It just means we take the time we need. If something's going too fast, we put the brakes on, we slow down, we revise and rethink. So all of August, Mercury retrograde. And then on August 14th, Mars will have moved into Gemini and will meet up with Jupiter. So Mars will meet Uranus in July and then Jupiter in August, and really help translate that Jupiter Uranus story. Again, help bring in whatever this next chapter is into the light of day. And Mars is how we enact our will in the world. And so I just wonder if there won't be some doors to open or opportunities to step into that could be really exciting. So watch for that and think about that. As we get into August and September, those planets that are in Virgo start opposing Saturn and Neptune that are in Pisces. And so Saturn tends to slow things down. It tends to it can be a place where we fear things. It can be a place where we're it can also be maturity. It can be refinement and maturity. And so when our faster moving planets are opposite Saturn, there might be a chance for us to revise the plan. So we've had this go fast energy. August is kind of slowing us down and maybe giving us a chance to revise and rethink what it is that we're starting to get going on. Sometimes oppositions from Saturn can also feel like a lot of pressure. It can also feel like just like a heavy weight on our shoulders. So if you've got any placements in Virgo, August might be a month to watch for. That can feel heavy, particularly if you're a Virgo sun. You may already have been feeling this, but it could come into place, and it feels heavy. It feels like there's some just some tension or arguments and it's all for your soul's evolution, but it's not always the easiest. And then those Virgo planets go on to oppose Neptune, and Neptune is very much about agape love and cosmic consciousness and breaking down boundaries. And so the opposition between the Virgo planets, which are more about analysis and discretion and really earthly usability and discernment, opposing Neptune, which is about like seeing the cosmic picture, not even the bigger picture, the cosmic picture. Sometimes that can feel a little disjunct, or it again, when we have opposition, sometimes it feels like there's some outside pressure, like asking us to do things that are uncomfortable. So and I guess I should flip it around. The positive side of that is that any of those planets in Virgo around August, or if you have Virgo placements in your birth chart, are really also being invited to break down some boundaries and to open some doors and to see things in some new ways that might not otherwise have been available. Really to kind of refine and find the beauty and the romance in whatever's going on. So that's August for us. Where I think July could feel kind of fast. August, I think, will give us a chance to slow down, or an invitation to really slow down, and with that conjunction with Mars, really think about how we enact our will, how we step forward and bring the things we've been thinking about, the things that have been initiated with the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction, into fruition. All right, let's look at September. So September starts with Pluto re-entering Capricorn. So in January, Pluto entered Aquarius, and it went forward a little bit, I think to 2 degrees, 1 or 2 degrees of Aquarius. Again, Pluto moves really slowly. and then it went retrograde and it backed up. And September 1st, it will go back into Capricorn for the last time in our lifetimes. Last time in 248 years, it will touch Capricorn. So when a planet is at the final degrees of a sign, when it's doing this cleanup work, particularly a planet like Capricorn, we are likely to see some of these structural changes start to hopefully solidify. Hopefully, we'll have learned our lessons and figured some stuff out. So, any of us with significant Capricorn placements might feel a little blip around between September and then November 25th, I think is when it goes back into Aquarius for good. So this time where we're back in Pluto and Capricorn, we could just be wrapping up some of those Pluto and Capricorn stories, which happened for us between 2008 and 2023. And that's a long time, and there could be lots of stories. But there might be just some final touches here. I gotta say that I'm not incredibly excited about Pluto re-entering Capricorn at this time because we'll be hot and heavy into election season in the US, and I am interested to see what comes of all of that. I'm not making any predictions of it except to say that what Pluto's the god of the underworld. And so, sometimes I think about the work Pluto does as sort of like making diamonds. So coal is under the earth, and coal comes about through millions of years of heat and pressure. And diamonds are formed out of that coal through millions more years of heat and pressure. And so that's what Pluto does. It puts pressure on us until that diamond forms. So the work gets harder and harder and harder and harder until we see the beauty and the gem that we are. That's what Pluto wants. Pluto wants us to be so authentically who we are, but it's hard work. And this is something I'm curious about, and certainly will go into with an open mind and with curiosity. Not excited about that being the U.S. election time, but we'll see what happens. Yeah, again, I'm not making any predictions as to what will happen or which way it will go, but I can say it will likely be intense, and it will likely really show and possibly even break the systems that are on the verge of crumbling. All right after Pluto re-enters Capricorn on September 2nd, Mars squares Neptune. And again, when I mentioned Mars meeting Uranus, like this happens frequently. Mars takes about a couple years to go around the cycle, so it happens every 6 months or so that there is some connection with this. I bring this one up because Mars Neptune interactions are often or have the potential to be kind of like holy war kinds of activities, or very fervent, maybe fervent is a better way to say it, activities. So Neptune is the agape love, the higher good, the the ideal, and Mars is our action. So Neptune's in Pisces, and so Mars at this point will be in Virgo, and so there I'm sorry, Mars won't be in Virgo at this point. Mars will be in Gemini at this point. Sorry about that. Um, so it'll be interesting to see. Mars Neptune interactions can really bring us to act on what can be the higher good, but can also be, Neptune can be a little delusional or can be a little escapist. And so with Pluto re-entering Capricorn and Mars squaring Neptune, this could be, this beginning of September could be an interesting time period. Yeah, and we'll just have to watch and see what happens and what happens in our own lives. Certainly, this will be a good time to kind of be keeping a journal and seeing what shows up for you. And then September 17th, the eclipse seasons begin, and eclipse seasons are always times of change. The eclipses are sort of like a strobe light. The the light goes off, and when the light comes back on, things have moved. They are very often an indicator of things shifting. And so we'll have an eclipse on September 17th. So I guess all this is to say September is, it has the potential to be a month where I think we want to be getting all of our sleep, making sure our self-care routine is where it needs to be, make sure we're taking care of ourselves, filling our cup first, because I think there's just going to be a lot swirling in the air. Um, during this time, the Virgo planets will oppose Saturn and Neptune in Pisces, and again we talked a little bit about that, but that's um, there's just some tension there. So September, I'm intrigued to see what September brings for us. Um, I will say, now that I've sounded worried, um, all of this is for our soul's evolution and is for the greater good. I do believe that we are moving in the direction of a more justice and a more perfect alignment with who we are meant to be in the world. I do believe that that it is our jobs to heal ourselves first, and when we heal ourselves, we heal the world. So I think all of this energy, whatever happens, whatever tensions arise, like that's where we're going. And so please hold that in your head and know that September might be kind of a tense time, and it might reverberate. Sometimes these things don't show up necessarily on a dime. That these kinds of moments initiate a pattern that will play out over some period of time. All right, October. October, we have the second eclipse of this eclipse season, the solar eclipse on October 2nd. And again, eclipses bring change. Solar eclipses can be changes to things that happen externally that change how we think internally. So the moon covers the sun during a solar eclipse. We won't see it in the US, but nonetheless, it will impact us. So that's what I'm looking for in October. There are other transits, but they're not, but that's the most significant one. And the other transits being that the planets that are in Libra at that point will square Pluto, because Pluto will be back in Capricorn at that point, and so there will be a square to that. So there's going to be um, some invitation to adjust and to make some particularly some final kind of adjustments in um, how we want to act, how we want those Capricorn parts of our chart to be reformed for good. This is the last time the planets, the faster moving planets, when they enter Libra, this is the last time they will square Pluto in Capricorn like that, because Pluto is going to move out of Capricorn and into Aquarius. So in October, planets will start moving into Scorpio, and those planets will oppose Uranus and square Saturn and Neptune. And again, when planets oppose Uranus, sometimes that can be a little chaos. It can be a little like sudden changes. It can be like something moves and we have to catch up quickly. Squares to Saturn can feel like authoritative weights on our shoulders, but can also bring refinement and maturity to whatever we're doing. And then Neptune can bring um, that real spiritual beauty and alignment, but can also bring some delusion and some escapist desires or tendencies. So October, not as many specific transits that I'm really looking at, but there will be a lot of energy, a lot of push and pull in here that I'm curious how it'll all come together. All right, November. So November 3rd, Mars will oppose Pluto. Mars will be in Leo at this point, and I'm sorry, at this point, Mars will be in Cancer because Pluto will be in Capricorn. So Mars will oppose Pluto. And Mars is how we enact our will in the world. And as we've talked about, Pluto is that real transformative power that asks us to be authentically who we are. And so the two of them, when we have oppositions, um, those planets are as far apart as possible. And they're on the same fulcrum. Like they have the same goals, but they go about getting them in very, very different ways. And so this Mars opposite Pluto right around the time of the US elections makes me wonder what I think it's going to be tense. I think it will be a tense time. Certainly, if you've got any planets at the end of Cancer or at the end of Capricorn, um, this might be a time. It's a time to pay attention to. Again, a time to make sure your self-care routine is up to date, a time to make sure that you're pausing, to make sure that what you're doing is what you want to do. Also a time, if there is something you have needed to do, if you know very well that there is a change you need to make in your life, this could be the energy that gives you that ability to really step out and step into whatever has needed that reform. So yeah, so November, early November, I'm curious about, um, and it could be tense, and so yeah, so just to be sure we're taking care of ourselves. That's all I'm asking for any time. Be sure you're taking care of yourself, particularly around the beginning of November. I think um, this. I wonder about how the tone and the tension in the country is going to feel at that point, right before those elections, right before the election. Um, so right after that, November 19th, Pluto re-enters Aquarius for good for the next 20, 30 years, for a long, long time. I think it's until 2042. So I guess it's 20 years. Anyway, um, Pluto re-enters Aquarius and is there and reforming whatever the Aquarian part of your chart is for a good long time. So we will have worked on whatever Pluto is going to get done in Capricorn will be done at that point, and Pluto will move into Aquarius. So if you've got placements at the beginning of Aquarius, um, we've had the touch points. We've had 2 previous touch points, but this is really go time. This is really when Pluto moves in and really starts to clean up house in Aquarius. So we'll see. We'll see again how that, what that does for us. When planets like Pluto change sign, there is that pressure. We will feel some movement, probably similar to the movements we've been feeling. I don't know that it will be brand new kinds of things, but yeah. So I think that November will be an intense month because of that. And then we end November with a Mercury retrograde in Sagittarius, and so so that's also interesting. Uh, it Mars opposite Pluto could be an an unstoppable force hitting an immovable object. It could be that kind of energy. Pluto re-entering Aquarius, like there's just going to be this shift in energy, and then Mercury going retrograde at the end of the month. I'm curious if November feels heavy, and then as we end November, like we just are asked to slow down and really rethink our beliefs and rethink our values and rethink what truth looks like to us. So yeah, so November, again, I'm probably not a walk in the park. I think it's going to feel very different than the spring has felt. Um, Heavier certainly than the spring has felt, and probably slower um, than it has felt. All right, then December. How are we going to end the year? So in December, Mars goes retrograde. It will go to, I think, about 6 degrees of Leo, and then it will retrograde back into Cancer. And Mars retrogrades, again, Mars is how we enact our will in the world. And so when Mars is retrograde, we really have an opportunity to rethink how it is that we enact our will in the world, how we take action, what things we do to get to where we want to go. And we're specifically looking at the early degrees of Leo and the later degrees of Cancer. So that's Cancer and Leo parts of our charts are ripe for some reform between December 6th and then into the new year. So that potential to be interesting. I don't usually find Mars retrogrades are, um, they're the the thing I notice mostly is the slowing down, is that it's really a time to be thoughtful and internal, particularly since Mercury will also be retrograde at this point. Um, and um, and that, so there'll be a lot of like slow down, pause, let's rethink, let's redo, let's revise, both our actions and our ideas. And, with Mars in Cancer, Cancer can be our home, Cancer can be our family, really depends on where it shows up in your chart. But in Cancer, Mars in Cancer likes to feel secure, and Mars in Cancer is kind of like the tiger mama, like I'm going to protect what's mine. And so there might be some need to revise how we think about protecting ourselves or protecting our families or protecting our homes. The little bit of Leo it's in, Leo is definitely like, this is me, this is my space. And so there just might be some revision. There will be some revision in there, depending on what placements you've got, in the first few degrees of Leo, and then the last chunk of Cancer. Um, yeah, then Mercury goes direct to end the year. The last couple of years, we've gone into the new year with Mercury retrograde. So that'll be something. We'll go into the new year with a Mars retrograde this year. And then finally, I didn't write the date down for this, but Jupiter squares Saturn, which I think will be interesting. Jupiter and Saturn are our teacher planets. They teach us both in different ways. They provide structure in different ways. So Jupiter is is expansive and builds, but within a structure and within a belief system and within a format. So Jupiter often represents like our education or our spiritual beliefs. That Jupiter is often where we find God in the world and in our charts. And it is structures, it is foundations, but it's those foundations that we build beliefs on and that we build wisdom on and knowledge on, and that kind of thing. And squaring Saturn is where we um is the structures and the authorities that sometimes don't feel good. Saturn is maturity. Saturn is slow, wise. It's I sometimes call it like the sacred containers in which we can do those Jupiterian things and build things. It's the foundation. It can be the boring stuff, like the being the adult in the room. So when Jupiter and Saturn square each other, it's a conversation between those two teacher planets about how we go about building these next chapters, building the things we want to do. So we'll end the year with that Jupiter Saturn square, which I think overall will be positive. Um, right now, Saturn is in Pisces, which is Jupiter's sign. So I think it'll be interesting. It'll be an interesting way to end the year with that Mars retrograde and that Jupiter square Saturn. I um, I don't know that this is going to be like a flamboyant holiday season, um, but I think it'll be a little lighter than September, October, November will be, if we're willing to go slow, if we're willing to pace ourselves and not try and push forward too fast, because if we try and push forward too fast, I think we're going to get knocked down. So that is how we will end the year. So overall, I think the tone for the second half of the year is going to be different than certainly the spring was. Um, less expansion and less like ideas and less like bringing it all in, and more getting down and doing the work and digging deep and you know figuring out the pieces. It might feel slow, it might feel heavy, um, and we can work with that energy. It's overall we are yeah, we're building a better system for ourselves through all of this. So I hope this helps. Again, if you haven't, please hit the like button. Please subscribe. Help people find me, help the channel grow. I very much appreciate it. My name is Lisa Merrifield. I'm at Trails Edge Astrology, and this is how you can find me. Thanks so much. Talk to you soon.